John and Brittany, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks for having us.
This is like, I feel like somehow we're getting the band back together. I met both of you differently. Brittany, we met at Housing Wire Engage Conference, and I'm pretty sure we almost killed you on a scooter.
That was so fun. Yes.
Probably the most awkward introduction you've ever been given. And then John, I sketchily subtweeted you in a social media post, and you reached out to me in a very special way. We'll get into that here in a second. But you know, I've followed you just sort of in the background, watching podcasts and things like that. And then you came to the office the other day, and so that's how we met.
Yeah, it's sketchily is a good word.
Yep.
And you know, touch you in a special way is a very interesting way to like tee up an introduction as well. I mean, it's not awkward or weird at all.
All right, perfect. So we almost killed Brittany. We've used the word sketchily with you. Great. And then we said we wanted to do a podcast on the power of gifting. And you had just been in the office, John. I feel like we had already sort of worn that welcome out with you as somebody who totally understands the power of gifting and favors and all that kind of stuff. He's like, you know what? Let's just leave John alone. I haven't bugged Brittany in a few months. We'll bug Brittany. And Brittany's like, hey, have you talked to John? He's the king of gifting. And so here we are.
Yeah, exactly. No, Brittany. Anytime Brittany asks for something, I just say yes. So you asked the right person to engage me. So well done.
Right. And so just a little background on both of you. Brittany, we'll start with you. So you talk a lot about Superfans. Again, we heard you as the keynote at Housing Wire Engage, and then you've got a book coming out around that, correct? Or is it already out?
I do, yes. I will have a book coming out in 2020 that I'm very excited about. It's all about the strategic power of creating superfans.
Very cool. And then, John, you wrote Giftology, which came out, I think, a couple years ago, but you were telling me before we started recording that this is really a 19-year play of content delivery, right?
Yeah, I started it when I was 20 in college on accident, like a lot of businesses, out of desperation. So yeah, we've been teaching this and executing this and helping people, you know, kind of the done-for-you service for, going on 19 years.
Wow, incredible. So again, I'll talk about your bios in post-production. I think you guys are both worried that I'm going to talk mean about you after we stop recording. But I want to jump right in. Clearly, you know, Brittany, when you talk about building superfans, John, when you talk about the power of gifting, you know, all of this dovetails together. So Brittany, why don't we start with you? You know, again, watching your presentation, talking about the power of building superfans and how they can help you and your business. Talk a little bit about that, and then hopefully we'll segue that into the gifting piece.
Yeah, so you know, I've never met somebody who said to me, I get too many referrals in my business, right? And so when I talk about superfans, I have a longer definition that I go into sometimes, but essentially a superfan is a customer that creates more customers for you. And I always say, if you can create customers that create more customers, think about how much easier your job becomes, right? And think about how much more fun it becomes when you have to worry less about acquisition and less about retention, and you get to just do a great job delivering whatever it is that you deliver, your product or your service to people. It frees up so much of your time to just help people. And by virtue of helping those people, you're going to get more organic referrals naturally. So it just becomes this really great cycle of engaging people in a fun, authentic way, adding value to them, and then they will naturally bring more customers to you. So that's really the power of creating superfans, and that's really why it's not only so important, but so fun to think of new and exciting ways to engage your customer base on a regular basis.
Right. And John, I'd love for you to, I guess, maybe talk about high level the power of gifting, but then respond to what Brittany said in that situation when you do create a superfan. What should that superfan do? How should that person respond as a thank you? Because I think you've got a little bit of a hot take on this. We talked about it before we started recording.
Yeah, so what I'd say is nobody cares about gifts, but everybody cares about outcomes. Everybody cares about referrals. So what Brittany's talking about is really, like, that's the desired result. People don't like dream about gifts maybe for themselves, but they're not thinking about gifts like, oh, I just want to give out a bunch of gifts. But everybody loves referrals. Everybody loves retention. Everybody loves what we call active loyalty. Most people have clients that sit on their hands and maybe stick around as a client, but they're not, you know, fully bought into you. When you do what Brittany's talking about and get, you know, one person, 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people to be super fans, they're going out and actively selling. And really, at a core level, everybody says relationships are their most valuable asset, but most people suck at showing gratitude and appreciation to whether it's to clients or referral sources or partners. And so really what Brittany's talking about, we just help do one thing, which is send amazing, tangible things to those super fans. We pour gasoline on the fire that's there to get it to burn brighter. And so instead of getting one referral a year, you're getting one referral a month. And that's only done if you understand that swag and trinkets and the timing of the gift, all of those things matter if you want to turn somebody and, encourage somebody to be a super fan.
And Brittany, what part of that does that play into the super fan building process for you?
Well, I love that John used the word strategic, because it's all about doing it the right way. Because with any marketing tactic, including gifting, if you do it wrong, it can backfire, right? Like, you can end up looking like a jerk a little bit. But I think talking about being strategic is the most important thing. And I have a method that I call the Superfan Wave. Wave is an acronym that stands for welcomed, appreciated, validated, and engaged. And it's sort of like the Maslow's hierarchy of super fandom, and touching customers at each one of those levels to make sure they're, going into your funnel of engaging with your brand to become this more engaged super fan, and thinking about how you use gifting or any other tool at every level, right? Because you don't want to send like a 5-figure gift to somebody super early on. You're going to freak them out, right? You're going to be like, whoa, what are you doing? Or they're going to think, wait, how much are you adding to the cost of this to cover this expensive, elaborate gift? So it's all about the right gift for the right person at the right time. And if you're not putting the strategy behind it, if you're not putting the thought behind it, then it can all backfire or blow up spectacularly. Yeah,
and I think, John, for you, having read the book, heard you talk, you have actually done the mega, air quotes, crazy gift to make an impression. So where are you on that one? Because I totally agree with Brittany, because if you come on too strong, too fast, I mean, that could weird someone out. But there's a fine line between weird and wow, right?
Well, what I'd say is that it depends on what business you're in and who you're going after. If you're going after a Fortune 100 CEO and you're saying that their $10,000 an hour time or $20,000 an hour time is worth them sitting down with you for 10 minutes, if you're using gifting really as a shock and awe approach or as a Dream 100 approach to Gary Vee talks about, like, he's an attention broker. And so what we teach is if you really say that, whatever your pitch is, your service, your product to that prospect is worth their time, you better put your money where your mouth is, not only with the quality of what you're sending, but the personalization. So there are times that shock and awe works. Oftentimes it is for somebody that's a super high level influencer or prospect, and they're not even a client yet. You're just trying to pre-buy their attention and show them that you're actually worth their time to sit down for 5 minutes or meet with them for 60 minutes or whatever else. I do agree that there's a big difference between swag and trinkets. Polo shirts for $47 and sending somebody that's a client that just became a client a Rolex for $25 grand. That's a bribe. That means you're charging too much. The sweet spot is for most of the things that we teach people to do in all industries. People are like, well, does this work in finance or does this work in tech? And I'm like, are there human beings there?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, well, then it works.
Right.
Like, you should be the same cost as a nice dinner out with wine, ball game tickets to a nice game or a round of golf, is where most of the what we call artifacts. I think gift has kind of become like this meaningless thing. Like the $2 koozie is a gift, an Amazon gift card is a gift, a polo shirt's a gift. Like, those aren't gifts. So our goal is $100 to maybe $1,000 per gift per artifact. So it's thoughtful. It doesn't look douchey and over the top and like you're trying to buy their business. But it also doesn't feel like you're undervaluing them either and saying, hey, you just spent $1 million with me this year. Here's your box of peanut brittle or your cheap bottle of wine, which is how most people appreciate their most important relationships. And they're like, oh, John and Brittany, gifting and building relationships doesn't work. I'm like, it's because you suck at it. You just sent the wrong thing to the wrong person and you actually spent money to have a negative impression. That's not a good ROI.
Yeah. You mentioned artifacts. I want to get into a little bit more of that here in a second. But Brittany, you've got a book that's coming out. John, you've written a book. Knowing a little bit about how the process works, there are a lot of asks to be made. You know, hey, so-and-so, can you buy 100 of these? And hey, so-and-so, can you buy 50? And you give them away on your podcast. I mean, I know that that's a part of the deal. So, you know, Brittany, have you thought about what your thank you will look like, or what that gift process will look like? I'd love to sort of take this into more like tangible, like real life experiences with the both of you.
Yeah, so I think for me, my gifting approach is very different depending on who I'm gifting. Because if you think about the best gifts that you've ever received in your life, either personally or professionally. The ones that were the most meaningful were almost certainly the ones that were most personal, right? And I've actually I've never told this story before, and it's just popping in my head. So when I was a junior or senior in high school, I got one of the coolest gifts ever for Valentine's Day from my boyfriend that I was dating at the time. And it was so cool because, so he worked at the mall, so I think he got a discount to like all the mall stores. He bought this giant teddy bear, and then he went around and like decked out the teddy bear with all this stuff. So he got like a cool hoodie that was my size that the teddy bear was wearing, and then this was like when those backpack purses were cool. Right. So he got like a backpack purse and filled the backpack purse with like all this stuff. And the teddy bear was wearing earrings that were for me, and there was like a bracelet on the teddy bear. So there, it was like 30 gifts put together on this one. Like when I looked at it, I was like, oh, it's like a cool teddy bear. But then I saw it was like gift after gift after gift, and it was so fun and it was so personal, and that was such a cool experience that again, it's popping into my head now, like 20 years later, when I think about the power of a cool gift. And I think it's all about knowing your customer, right? Or working with a partner who's going to do the research to discover your customer. And we're so fortunate to live in a time to where everybody just overshares on social media all the time. Like if you can't figure out what's going to move the needle for your client or your potential client, you're not trying hard enough, right? Like if you can't figure out, it's either somebody who's putting very little online, which in and of itself should tell you a little bit about what they value and what they might enjoy as an artifact or a gift, or it's that you're just not doing the research to care about them. And when these gifts backfire can be when somebody feels unappreciated, right? It can have the total opposite effect because you're sending them an artifact for the wrong sports team, right? Like you accidentally, you thought they were the fan of the college team in that market, but they were a fan of the pro team or whatever it is. So it's taking the time to figure it out. And when gifting is done well, people tell the story. And that's really when you see the ROI, right? When you get not just the referrals, but the people sharing it organically because they've had that wow experience and they were so blown away by what it was that showed up for them unexpectedly. I was speaking at a mortgage event probably like 6 weeks ago, and it was a 2-day event, and I posted about it on my socials, and a friend of mine who I haven't seen in years, who I talk to occasionally, but it's been probably like 3 years since I saw him, reached out to me and sent me this long Facebook Messenger message just because he saw that I was at a mortgage event, and he said, hey, I want to share with you the story of what a loan officer did for me. And I was like, yeah, I can't wait to hear about it. So he had moved from Boston to Wisconsin. And he had mentioned to the originator that was helping him in Wisconsin that he felt a little weird leaving the house behind in Boston because all 3 of his children had lived there or had been born there. And he was like, when my wife and I moved here and we bought this house, we thought we were going to raise our kids here, and it's just a little weird leaving it behind, even though we're moving across the country. So the person who did the loan for him in Wisconsin commissioned somebody to do a watercolor portrait of the house in Boston, of the home with the 3 children on a giant canvas, and it was hanging above the fireplace when they moved into that home in Wisconsin. And so, there was a little note saying like, you're not leaving it far behind, like you're gonna build so many new memories here. We can't wait to, see all the memories that you and your family build in this beautiful new home. So to do something like that, that's such a wow, that's so cool. I don't know how much it costs to commission a watercolor portrait, like what, a few $100s, $1,000 maybe?
Right.
There's nothing that he could have spent money on off the rack, or no experience that would have had that kind of meaning and that kind of value, or made the kind of impact that years later he would randomly send me a message about it just because he saw that I was posting that I was in a mortgage event. He said, I've got a story I have to share with you because I want you to share it with anybody you're talking to in the mortgage space.
Yeah.
So doing things like that to say, what is it? Can I pick up a cue from a conversation? Like really doing a great job of listening to your customers, because people will tell you what's important to them, right?
Right.
They'll do it without even meaning to, because we talk about the things we care about. We talk about what matters to us. So just listening and training yourself to, when you hear a trigger about something, put it in your CRM, write it down, save it, because at some point you'll be able to go back to it and show that not only do you appreciate them and not only do you care about them, but you're actually doing a great job of listening to what it is that they're telling you. And that's how you make people feel validated. That's how you engage them. And that's how you create the kind of customers that will create more customers for you for years to come.
Yeah, and John, I'm sure you love every piece of that. I mean, that's like the artifact, right? It's creating that experience, creating a super memorable thing that, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that person did that. I know you've got millions of stories. I mean, is there one that, whether you did personally or maybe a client of yours, put into play that you like to point to?
Yeah, well, I think there's two different levels of gifting. We call one proactive gifting, where you're like, and it's more scalable. So it's like taking your top 100, your top 1,000, and the canvas might be the same. Like the knives. My gift budget this year is about $500,000, and that's really my entire marketing budget. I don't spend money on marketing; all of it goes into gifting. I don't recommend that for everybody. But it started out 19 years ago when I was in college at $500 a month, and I've worked up to that over time. But that $500,000 turns into a lot of revenue because we're loving on those relationships. And so some of it might be taking, a $500, $5,000 knife set, and I might send that same knife set to 1,000 CEOs. But every knife is engraved with something that's important to them. It could be Bible verses, could be things that I found out, that quotes that they gave 20 years ago on a podcast or a show or a media appearance. So the knives are just the delivery vehicle for the emotion. Just like the canvas is worth nothing without the right thing painted on it. The knives are worth, okay, they're cool, the Cutco knives, and they could go forward their own knives. It's what's put onto it that makes it meaningful. And so we try to teach people to do, foundational gifting, the proactive, where they can send the same thing to 1,000 people, but personalize every single piece.
Oh, that's cool.
A core part of our story when I'm sending out the CEOs, like we just sent one to Ruhlin, one of the CEOs of traffic and conversion. I sent him a $5,000 knife set, but it was all quotes. And his wife, who's never on camera, was like, "This is the coolest gift anybody's ever sent us in 30 years. And they live in a $5 million house. It wasn't about the knives, it was about the emotion.
Correct.
And really that's what people confuse, is they think, oh, I gotta give Bose headphones or Apple. Like, people can afford their own technology, they can afford their own Rolex if they want it. It's about, what does it mean? And in our opinion, listening for the crazy one-off opportunities is the other 20%. So 80% is proactive, how you scale gifting and still make it really meaningful and personal. And then listening for, hey, like Cameron Harold's a great story. Like I wanted him as a mentor, advisor, and as a salesperson for me. He's like one of the top business coaches in the world. And I found out he loved Brooks Brothers. Well, I went and got $7,000 of clothes and outfitted his hotel room to look like a Brooks Brothers store. And I've probably invested $20,000 into that relationship over 10, 12 years. So $2,000 a year.
Yeah.
I couldn't hire him for $2 million a year. And I can tie revenue 50x to that one relationship, that one Superfan. And so where people are like, oh, I can never afford to do that. I'm like, if all of your clients were actually selling for you, what would that be worth to you? And that's where people, they mess up the math. They think, oh, I'm going to get a 2x return or a 3x return. What they don't realize is that if you incorporate what Brittany's teaching you, is you can literally get 50x, 100x, 1,000x returns off of loving on those relationships. And so people shortchange themselves because they're comparing to Facebook ads or sponsorship deals or all these other things, and they don't realize the power of going all in on the few versus going mediocre on the masses.
Yeah, that Brooks Brothers story is bananas, and I'll just sort of leave it at that. So go listen to podcasts, read the book, all the above. But I mean, I guess my story that I'll tell is tied to you, John. I mean, one of our vendor partners must have read your book. He listened to a podcast that my wife and I hosted, and in a random episode, in a random, like the 37th minute, heard me mention that my dream car someday is a black Range Rover. I don't know what we were talking about. And 2 weeks later, I get a giant box from him, open it up, there's another box, and then inside that is a nicer wrap box, and I open it up, and it is a toy Land Rover, so close enough. And the note says, hey, just wanted to reach out. I know this isn't the real thing, but hopefully it's close enough. Just want to let you know how much we care about you, think about you, how much you mean to us as a client. I think it probably cost $10, but it blew me away. And I posted about it on social media and tagged you because I remember a podcast that you did with Lewis Howes at the very bottom of that post. And I just said, hey, I don't know John at all, but this experience reminded me so much of hearing that podcast. And then I was fortunate enough, I'll say, to be on the other end of one of your artifact giftings, John, that you just mentioned. And it completely floored me, blew me away. And this can veer into, in the world of influencers and everything like that, it could veer into are we doing this for an end result? Are we doing this for, because I'm hoping that this person puts something on social media? And I can just say, after meeting you, John, and I know we're all in this business, but I know it was genuine. And I know that as part of what you do day to day, but it was just such a genuine moment, such a wow experience. And now I'm really intimidated on how to thank both of you after this podcast.
Clearly I have a soft spot for teddy bears.
You can join a support group with my wife. She hates buying gifts for me.
How can anyone buy you a gift? You came in the office the other day and I handed you a gift bag here, sorry. Here, I put everything I could fit into the bag. I'm sorry, John. I'm sorry. Don't judge me.
Don't judge me.
Feel better. I'm gonna make you feel better. I am the best John gifting
Please.
story. So earlier this year, I bought 15 boxes of Girl Scout cookies or something ridiculous that I didn't even remember buying. It was one of those late at night things.
Yeah.
And so I took a picture of this box of all these cookies just because it was funny and put it on Facebook and was like, yeah, so I'm going to have to eat 15 boxes of Girl Scout cookies now. And then a bunch of people posted send them my way or wish I lived closer or whatever. And I was like, oh, this is actually cool, that a lot of people want these cookies. So the next day at Kroger, there was a Girl Scout stand out in front. So I bought 20 more boxes. And I was like, I'm going to just send boxes to everybody who replied saying hey, thanks for helping me eat all these cookies. So my son was so young at the time. I'm doing this in the middle of the night, scribbling stuff down, everybody who wrote back, whatever. And a different John, friend of ours, mutual friend of ours, had commented that he wanted cookies. And my handwriting was so sloppy that I thought it was John Ruhlin and sent the cookies meant for the other John. And John texted me a few days later and was like, hey, why did you send me random Girl Scout cookies? It was nice of you, but I don't eat cookies. And I was like, what? And I was so confused because I was like, why did he ask me for cookies if he doesn't like cookies? And I went back and looked and it was totally the wrong person. And I accidentally sent them to John Ruhlin instead of our friend John Rampton. And then when I told John Rampton about it, because I thought it was so funny, he was like, do I get cookies?
Right.
And I was on. I was like, I've got one person who thinks I'm an idiot because he's like, yeah, we're super healthy. And then the other one that was like, wait, so you just sent my cookies to somebody else and now there's not even cookies?
Yeah.
So don't feel like you're going to completely mess up because I definitely messed up more than you could.
So just as we start to wrap this thing up, I got a couple more questions, and one I sort of segued it for us here is there's the wow, there's the artifact, but that $10, $15 toy Land Rover completely floored me. It completely got my attention. So you don't always have to drop the hammer, and so I'd love to kind of hear that from both of you. Sometimes a genuine thank you note. I think what I'm hearing is thank you notes are making a comeback. And I would just love to hear sort of that other end of the spectrum from both of you.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of handwritten thank you notes. I send a lot of them. And this is a story you may have heard me tell in one of my keynotes one of these times. But probably about 3 years ago, I was having coffee with somebody, and he mentioned that his birthday was the following week. And so instead of a handwritten thank you note, instead of a handwritten just thank you note, I wrote a thank you note in a birthday card that I happened to have at my desk, sent it off to him. And it was I could tell this was not a great meeting. I was like, this person is never going to hire me. It was a friend of a friend thing that he just was trying to get out of the meeting as soon as possible. And the only reason I sent the note, honestly, was to check the box in my CRM that I did it, because I'm such a check the box kind of person. But I was like, he's never going to work with me. I'm never going to hear from this guy again. About a week later, I get a phone call. And he says, hey, I just want to thank you for the birthday card and let you know how much it meant. And I was like, yeah, of course. Like, how was your birthday? Did you have a good time? And he said, no, I've been dreading my birthday all year because every single year since I was, a kid, I got a birthday card from my grandma in the mail. And a lot of years, that's the only birthday card I got. Like when I was in college, when I first moved to New York, I only would get a birthday card from my grandma. And my grandma passed away 8 months ago. And I was dreading my birthday because I knew I wasn't going to get that card this year. And I got your card on my birthday, and I almost broke down. I feel like my grandma put you in my life to send that birthday card to me. Which, like, talk about, the kind of emotion that you can't buy, the kind of connection that, no amount of money can pay. He said, I feel like my grandma put you in my life to send me that birthday card. So, and we've become great friends. He's become a customer. But, again, it's when that kind of thing happens, it's not even about the customer relationship anymore. When you connect with somebody on a human level and you become, a friend of them, you become connected with them because you've shared this human emotion or moment that you can't buy. So I absolutely agree with you. It's not about the amount of money. A $10 gift or a handwritten card for $2 can absolutely move the needle more than a 4 or even 5-figure gift.
Yeah, and so John, what if we've got a $50 a month budget or a $100 a month budget? What advice would you have?
Look at your numbers again, because I check your priorities. People say relationships are their most valuable asset. I'll look at their calendar and look at their checkbook and where they're investing their dollars, and I'll challenge them whether or not that's really their priorities or not. But with all of that said, there's certain industries you're dealing with, Walmart, and you can't even take them out for a cup of coffee. The one thing that you can do with every single thing, and when clients hire us to do all their gifting, there's a rule, and one of the rules is that we will not send gifts from Amazon because that feels automated, and we will not allow them to send gifts out, whether it's to one person or 10,000 people, unless there's a handwritten note. The handwritten note is what communicates that it's from one human to another. We won't allow them to sign the note from the team.
Wow.
They didn't do business with the team. They did business with a human, one human to another human. And the note provides context. Actually, I think the note is oftentimes more meaningful and more impactful. The gift, the item is just the tangible trigger of the relationship. And so whether it's a $10 item or a $1,000 item, the note provides context to the relationship, and that's what provides the meaning. And so if you can't afford to do nice gifts, or you're in, like, most people will use I can't do it because I'm regulated, and I'm like, you're using as an excuse to give lame gifts or to not give gifts. You're just cheap. Just admit being cheap. But if it is a relationship where either you're in college or you're just starting the business and you can't afford to, a handwritten note, take an hour to write one note, and then if you really want to take it, put it on steroids, take that note to the other person, hand deliver it to them, and read it to them in person. And if you put a lot of thought into the note, the likelihood of you crying and the other person crying goes up exponentially, and your joy and your gratitude. There's been studies done on this, on all these studies on happiness. And so the note to me is like part of the secret sauce. Whether you want to be a super fan or whether you want to tap into Giftology, like, it is making a comeback because almost everything anymore is digital. And so if you're part of the 0.5% of people that still handwrite notes, you go up the food chain to your most affluent CEOs, and the people that you really want to impact from an influencer perspective, they appreciate that personal touch and that the effort that goes into it. So to me, it's not about the dollar figure, but it is important to show that, like, if you're going to reinvest in people, but the handwritten note to me is one of the game changers.
We are fully entrenched in the holiday season, and so this is the time to give gifts. Or is it, John? I'm teeing you up, buddy.
If you want to light $100 bills on fire, then now's the time.
Okay.
It's the dumbest investment that anybody, if you want to put $1 into gifting as marketing and to really light your relationships on fire, as a gifting service, we don't allow people to send gifts between Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's the black hole of the holidays. Your conference table and all of your clients and your employees, everybody is eating themselves, drinking themselves to death, and I talked to the president of a big bank this morning, international bank, and he said, I get numb. This is what he said. I get numb from all the stuff that's coming in, and I feel bad and guilty, but I have to get it out of my office, and my employees take it before I can even see what it is. So you're spending, whether you're spending $10, $100, $1,000, $1 million, $1 billion, it's just zeros. But if you want to invest money into your most important relationships, don't give gifts at expected times. Don't give gifts after a referral because now it's a transactional relationship. Don't give gifts at the holidays because it's just an obligatory gift. And if you think about with your spouse, if you only do gifts on anniversaries, birthdays, and Christmas, do you get any brownie points or like, wow, like I can't believe you thought of me?
Okay, John, now I officially look very bad, but I'll let you keep going. But like, I'm hoping my wife does not listen to this. But go ahead.
Dude, it's like the things that it's amazing to me that we think that we can do stuff in business that we would never do in our personal lives, and think that our business relationships are going to thrive. They're just relationships. If you really view, from Brittany's perspective, you really want super fans, love on people as human beings. Go all in on them, and the back swell is like more than drenches and covers the costs and all that kind of stuff. It's like it pays for itself 100 times over, whether it's with your significant other and how you love on them, or whether it's your client or referral partner. I don't care the industry, but the holidays, like the absolute, like the worst possible time on the planet to send gifts. Period. End of story.
All right, so Brittany, you get to follow that.
I know, I was going to say people give them away at their holiday parties, right? Like, how many times have you been at a holiday party and there's, everybody has the raffle tickets, and what are you getting? You're getting all the gifts that people sent to the CEO. So I agree, it's absolutely the worst time. I found this out myself like 8 or 9 years ago. My company, we just didn't get it together in time. We were going to send out New Year's gifts and just like we're late. And I said, hey, maybe we should send Valentine's instead. Like that gives us another month to put it together. And we had the best reaction. Clients were so excited. And so we started doing it every year. So to anybody who was planning on gifting for the holidays, who now has had their mind completely changed by John, I would say use this time. Think about who matters to you. Think about how you want to show them that you matter, and pick another day, like Valentine's Day. Another thing that I love to do, I love to send half birthday cards to people, because everybody gets birthday cards. How many half birthday cards?
Interesting.
Right?
That's cool.
So find things that are fun that you can do that make sense for your brand, that make sense for your company, but most importantly, that make sense for your clients, that are going to make them feel, to go back to my acronym, welcomed, appreciated, validated, and engaged by you and your brand.
Well, I work for a company in a regulated environment. The company I worked for prior to this was in pharmaceutical, that world with pharmaceutical sales, the Sunshine Act, for anybody that might know that industry. And so, pharmaceutical drug reps and doctors and the technicalities there and what you can't do. And my wife works in television, where you can only accept certain dollar amount gifts as well. So I've been around this, and John, I like what you said about like, hey, don't let that be your excuse. You can work around that. And so the majority of people that listen to the Mortgage Impact Podcast are in a regulated environment. So hopefully they took away a few things from both of you. I know how busy both of you are, so thank you both so much. And I will now be paralyzed in fear over sending you both a gift. And my hot take is I'm going to lean the other way, and I'm just going to send you guys like an old, like crumpled up thank you note. That's going to be my trendy way to think. No, that's not going to, okay, great. But thank you.
Spell my name wrong.
Yeah, exactly, perfect. That'll make the right impression, and then I'll bring you back in April. But thank you both so much, and I wish you both happy holidays.